Two. Two, hello. Check. Two, hello. Two. Was up? Hello, folks. A little late. I'm a little late. I was doing some stuff. It went late last night. It was a long stream yesterday. I talked to Eugene, did a little singing. Then I talked for another hour and a half or so afterwards on a different podcast. I was a little zonked out afterwards. A handsome, stylish king, Logan on 9. Flattery will get you everywhere, my friend. Thank you. This gum-chewing, tousle-haired Casanova. Should I become more of a gum-chewing guy? Let's start being a gum chewer. It's kind of distracting, I think, when I'm trying to stream and talk all the time. If I was snapping on some gum all day. Yes, I was kind of tired. I spent the morning, I'm so bad about taking the stuff that I do on this show. I talk to so many cool people on here, and I do so much shit every single day, every single week, hours and hours of stuff, and I'm so bad about taking that stuff and putting it onto a YouTube channel. If I'd been doing this regularly over the last year and a half, perhaps I would have more of a thing going on YouTube. Perhaps I could get some kind of a monetization thing happening. I've just neglected to do it because I just never have the time, I feel like, or the mental energy. My mental energy is very low, considering I spend so much time sitting here yapping and hooting and hollering and etc. But I did want to get out my talk with Eugene Puryear yesterday, which was fantastic. So I just took some time today to edit that, get that out. I think I want to clip the content hamster wheel. It takes it out of you, Sean. It does. The content, I joke about the content mines thing because it's silly. I'm here singing Deacon Blues and stuff in my apartment, looking like this. It's silly, but it is also it's mentally exhausting to just constantly be doing it. Not that I don't love it. I do, obviously. But I did want to make sure I got my talk with Eugene out there. That's on YouTube now. I'm going to throw up my comments about Oliver Anthony or whatever his name is. I can't remember if I keep switching it up. And I have a backlog of stuff. I've got more clips I can be getting out there. So I'm going to work on doing that. It's just hard. It's hard. How's everyone doing? That was quite a stream yesterday, huh? What do we think about that? Wonderful talk with Eugene. And a little bit of singing. Was doing a little bit of singing as well. That's kind of exciting. There's the clip to the YouTube, the link to the YouTube video if you want to go ahead and give that a like or a share or whatever, what have you. Posted the link in the chat. Yeah, so I have decided though that the next time we get to 50 subs, whether that's today or tomorrow or a week from now or a month from now or whenever it is, I will do another karaoke song. I'm thinking the song that I will be performing the next time this milestone happens will be the song Betty Davis Eyes by Kim Carnes. Another one of my favorite tracks. So, again, I'm not telling people what to do. You know, who knows when this is going to happen, when or if. But just so you're aware, just so I'm putting it out there now, 50 subs triggers the karaoke segment. And that will be the next karaoke song, if and when that day comes. Betty Davis Eyes by Kim Carnes. A absolutely fantastic track. You know what I need? I realize I need to figure out how to do is to remove silence from video segments automatically. That's what I need to figure out how to do. That would really help my ability to churn out this YouTube content at a greater clip. Because that's a very time-intensive process. You streamline those videos and you get out all the pauses and all the different things, and you streamline it so it's this super quick ADD thing. Anyway, I don't know what we're doing today, honestly. I had so much like specific stuff planned yesterday that, and I was kind of working on this YouTube stuff, this afternoon, so I'd really have no clue what I'm going to be talking about or doing on here today. I did start later, obviously. It started at 3 p.m., which is fairly later than normal, but I am planning on going till probably 7 or 8 p.m. tonight. So still planning to get in a good 4 or 5 hours. I missed a call from China earlier. I thought it was spam, but what if it was the call? You never know. You always want to be there for that. Surely they understand that no one's answering the phone anymore, and they can have some kind of contingency around that. You know? Surely they must. Hey, Decadune, how's it going? Oh, you know what? You know what I wanted to start off with? I think this is a good way to start the stream today. And it's important, actually. It's important as well. Just head on over here. Oh, Eugene's not there. Get rid of that. I want to talk a little bit about taking accountability. And, no one is immune to making mistakes. And I think when someone does make a mistake, we have to treat that person with grace. As long as, this is not a blanket forgiveness. Not a blanket forgiveness, but if someone acknowledges the things they may have said or done and shows concretely that they're learning and growing from that and takes these steps to be held accountable, I think that's something that we should celebrate. Even when people make a misstep, whether this is someone that we like and support or just a random stranger, I think we need to show a little grace for people that are clearly putting in the effort to try and be better. And, Nick Lutzko is, he's a friend of the stream. He's a former guest. He's an artist that I have a lot of respect for. I don't know if he's a friend. We've chatted a few times. Never really hung out. Who is really, are any of us friends? It's all this online stuff, so it's hard to tell, frankly. But like to think of him as a colleague, someone that I like and respect. And I did see that he was taking a lot of flack for some comments that he had made, and I think that's understandable. I understand totally where the criticism was coming from, and I saw his response to some of this conversation, and I thought it was really impressive. You know, the way that he acknowledged the missteps, and then we had pledged to get better. You know, that's all we can really ask for, you know? Anyway, if you hadn't seen this clip, I just wanted to share that with you, chat, just to get the stream started off today. But here it is.
Um, I've never had to make a video quite like this before, and I really hope I don't have to again. But I recently used some incredibly irresponsible language online. Just for context, I'd just seen the trailer for this new film, The Last Vampire of the Diomedes, and if you're not aware, it's about Dracula haunting a pirate ship or something like that. And I made a tweet that essentially said if I were on that ship, I would simply splash his ass because Dracula can't get wet. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I said Dracula can't get wet. That was wrong and I regret it. But I'm making up for it. I'm the first one to admit now that Dracula can't get wet. Dracula can't get wet. Oh! Dracula, I'm sorry. I confused you with the witch from the Wizard of Oz. My father called me. How the hell could you mess up this bad? I am appalled by my reflection. For the record, I know Dracula doesn't have a reflection, but it can get wet. It takes huge balls to admit Dracula can get wet. I'll never forget Dracula can get.
So again, I just think I think that was a positive example that we can all learn from. Any of us admits made a mistake in our lives, you know? That's something that we can all that's an important lesson for all of us. And I thank Nick for taking this seriously and showing how committed he was to learning from his mistake on this. I think we all learned something here today. Yeah. Hey, Barfcast. You like this? You like this one? Good. Man, it's like I enjoy Nick's songs so much. Um like I almost get mad that they're so funny. Like I feel like that's a song that if that was just like a serious pop song would be like my favorite song. Like the actual like the musicianship and the songcraft behind these tracks is just like so outstanding. It's in a way it's frustrating, but also it's just it's that's the only way that he can. That's his whole angle. That's his whole lane, and he's just so great at it. You can't argue with it. But I'm like, man, if that was just like a song, not about Dracula being wet, but just like a pop song, I would be just playing that nonstop. And I still am. I'm still playing nonstop the song about Dracula, but you know. That one is an absolute banger though. That is an absolute banger, that one. Draculas can get wet, but you can't feed them after midnight. Yeah, I think that is the rule. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Just casually expending monumental talent on a joke. It is an absolute king. It's true. And his music that he does that's like non jokey music is also fantastic as well. But man, some of the times I hear these songs and I'm just like, God damn. It's just unbelievably good. What did he mean by wet? Yeah, maybe that's what it's. Dracula likes to smoke PCP. Maybe that's it. Perhaps that's it. I'm more upset that he called the Demeter a pirate ship, but live and learn. There's a lot of incorrect information in that. Both the name of the movie and the name of the ship. And the plot of the movie was all actually incorrect in retrospect. There was another song that gave me the same kind of feeling. I don't know if it went viral on TikTok a few weeks ago, and I think was on Twitter as well, where the guy's singing about like the steam that comes out of the ground in New York City. Did you see that one? Just got here and heard Dracula likes to smoke PCP. I don't see what the issue is. Like, this is a program where we have serious discussions, and you know, that's where that one took us. Yeah, that one is a banger, but I got the same thing. I'm just like, why isn't this just like a regular song? But I don't want to criticize these like incredibly talented people. I gotta find that one. Like, this is another absolute banger from this guy, Tom McGovern. What the fuck is happening here? What the fuck is happening here? What is coming out of the ground? And why is everybody in the city acting like they aren't worried while they're walking around? Ever think that it might be piss? That the underground has turned into steam? Like, what if every time you flush the toilet they just take all of the fluid, heat it up and blow it out of the street? What the fuck is happening here? I got the same kind of a vibe with that one. I'm like, why is this a joke song? Why, you know what I mean? Why is this a joke song? This is a hit. This is a Billboard 100 hit. If it's like a regular song, I don't know. I don't want to take anything away about the immensely talented people that are making this stuff, but it's like, damn. Really something else. Ton chemise est beau, et merci, Crad. When are musicians going to craft lyrics that are about the Communist Manifesto and State and Revolution, etc.? Exactly. I agree. I think that's a good question. Has my music been playing this whole time? No, it hasn't. Stopped it. Good. So I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do, folks. I'd probably like to watch like some video clips. Not that we weren't doing that already, but maybe we can watch some like newsy video clips. The thumbnail showed a hottie. What WTF is going on? I mean, there's nothing going on. I'm just doing the stream. People like this shirt. People seem to really like this shirt. All right, I think I might go hat mode as well. What do we think about that if I go hat mode as well? Would that be crazy? There we go. There we go. If I just had like a camera around my neck, I'd be like a secret agent tourist disguise. Oh, honey, let's just go take pictures of the embassy. You know? That kind of a thing. Huh? You have to see this quickie, it's worth it. Oh, I actually did see this, yeah. The communism understanders, as usual, displaying their vast knowledge of the subjects which they claim to know about.
It's fair game. Go ahead and do it, right? I mean, I remember 20 years old going to Trier, Germany, and trying to find the home of Karl Marx because, you know, 1848, he wrote Mein Kampf. I want to know what it was all about. So that's part of the education in America, if you so choose. So
yeah, it certainly is about the education in America. Couldn't agree more, actually, with that. Could not agree more. Mode Chapeau. Why is everyone speaking French in the chat? What's this? You silly man. You silly man. I was upset, but it was just someone being wrong on TV. Yeah. What do you know? It's yet another reactionary propagandist not having any fucking understanding of who Marx was or what Marxism is or what any of this shit even means. God, what a shocker. What a shocker. Has anyone seen hello Red Wizard, what's up? Non-Compete put out a documentary called How Fascism Serves Capitalism. That could be something to take a look at, maybe. I don't know if anyone's watched that. It's in the old watch later. That could be something to look at. I'm just looking at, what else is out there. Danny Haifong has a video about Taiwan. That could be good. Or do I want to start off doing something silly? Do I want to start off with something silly? Do we want to get silly first before we start doing this? Because like I said, I am going to be here for like 4 or 5 hours. Is it possibly time to watch a little reality TV series before we start jumping into all the crazy talk of Marxism and anti-imperialism and decolonialism and Pan-Africanism and multilateralism? All that good stuff. Perhaps before that time, Monsieur Chercheur. That could be something to do. Couldn't it? You ever think that it might be piss? See, now that's stuck in my head. I saw Bez D. Marx has a couple of things out there about fascism in Germany, about lies about inflation. There's really kind of a lot of stuff we could watch today. Get caught up on. I'm gonna have to probably eat something too before I do anything too crazy. So maybe I think for me, probably the best thing to do right now is to get started with something a little bit more loosey-goosey. I went on Twitter earlier today and really didn't realize the absolute fucking insanity of that ginger reactionary musician discourse that was happening. My tweet about it has so many quote tweets. Like, I would give myself brain damage if I were to go and look through all the quote tweets of that. Like, and there's like 800 comments or something. My brain would liquefy and come out of my fucking nose if I were to actually go through those and like read those quote tweets and all those comments. I did a little bit the day that tweet was getting attention, but no, I can't. I'm not doing any of that anymore. People were very, very defensive about that. Very, very defensive. I think that was my main lesson of the whole thing, is that like the people that were like sharing that song really loved to pretend to care about the plight of the average common man. And I think when you puncture that myth and how they're only like serving the very people that are oppressing the communities they claim to care about, they really react strongly to it, because it totally like deflates this completely false class conscious image that they're trying to project to others. And they don't like that when that's punctured. I feel like I didn't think this through, and I was kind of out of coffee today, and I don't think I have any Coke, and I think I'm low on caffeine. I think this might be like a little bit of a tricky situation for me today. I need at least one soda with caffeine, or an energy drink, or another coffee or something, and I think I'm just realizing now that I have no caffeine. I got no caffeine available right now. And I don't know... I literally don't know. This is probably a sad state of affairs vis-a-vis my health. But I'm not sure how I'm going to make it through the next 5 hours or so without that. That's going to be tricky. The streamer's lament. I think that's exactly what it is. I'm out of coffee as well. I went to make coffee this morning and I didn't have any, and I went out and got some at the place nearby. It may be time for delivery. Cinnamon challenge. It might be. I think that's what we're doing. I could leave and go get a Coke or energy drink for 5 minutes. It's not like I haven't left for extended periods before, but I also don't want to. How about that? I also just don't want to. Dracula, I'm sorry. That song is just fantastic. I guess I'm just like mad at Nick Letsko for just churning out these fucking amazing songs constantly. You know, I'd like to think that I can write a pretty decent song. You know, I'm pretty proud of some of the songs that I've released over the last year or so. I feel like it's just effortless for him. He just tosses off these like absolute pop genius songs like it's just nothing. And I actually find it kind of annoying. Yeah, I am mad. I really not like Nick. He's a great guy, but I'm a bit mad about it. I already sang into it with your Deacon Blues clip twice. In all honesty, Cinnamon Challenge, I did rewatch that because I wasn't sure how it sounded, and I was like, I rewatched Deacon Blues, and in fact, I highlighted it, so it's like I did save it if anyone wants to watch it. I think it's pretty good, honestly. I think I did a pretty good job on that. Just not to brag, you know, not to toot my own horn, not to be all like narcissistic. I watched it back then and I was like, that's pretty good. I mean, maybe it might be a little pitchy here and there, but like overall, it's a pretty decent, it's a deceptively hard song to sing. Let's Go majored in commercial songwriting. I did not know that. That comes through. Anyway, folks, as I mentioned, if you enjoyed the karaoke segment, I can make that a regular feature. Perhaps I should. You know, I'm going to advertise that in the title. Who knows? Maybe some weird people will appreciate that. Karaoke at 50 subs. That's such a hard word to spell. I have no idea how to spell that. Okay, we'll see if that lures anybody in here. Karaoke at 50 subs, and I told you that I mentioned earlier that if we do get to that point today or tomorrow or next week or whenever it is, you know, I know 50 subs is a lot of subs, so I'm not expecting it to happen often or anything like that. But if I do get back to 50 subs, I will perform a rendition of the song Betty Davis Eyes by Kim Carnes. One of my very favorite 80s pop songs. Betty Davis Eyes by Kim Carnes. That's the next karaoke song. If we make it to 50 subs, we'll do it again, okay? Whenever that is. Today. I mean, if it's today, then it's today. Again, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not telling anybody what to do, okay? I'm simply saying that's what will happen. The next time we get to 50 subs. Well, sir. That's that. That's that. We would admit we saw some man tracking. Well, I think we all learned a lot. It's been a pretty productive so far stream. We looked at our friend Nick Let's Go holding himself publicly accountable. Learned a lot there, and we learned a lot now as well with the man tracking. I feel like I have a lot more of an understanding about how to track men than I did previously to this. And I intend to put that to good use, those skills. You best believe. So I got an important milestone coming up. I'm at 8,896 followers. Just 4 more followers, and I'm going to be only 100 away. I will be 8.9K. I'll only be 100 followers away from 9,000 followers over here on twitch.tv. So if you are watching and you're not following the channel, if you're maybe a lurker, if you got lured in here, the algorithm lured in you here by my meta react man tracker content or my bright shirt that I'm wearing, either or, a smashing of the follow button would be a tremendous help today. Orb Lady says I'm going to go ahead and shoot someone with a gun now. Okay. Man, I get so many, like, I'm on WhatsApp and I don't use it to talk to that many people. There's a few people I know that use it, but it's pretty rare. But I get so many spam messages on there. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So thanks, Ron, for giving me the courage to go commit murder. And of course, that's a metaphor. And we don't condone any of that kind of behavior, obviously, just in case that's not clear. Sorry, I mentioned that I was planning on putting my my talk about the fucking song, the guy, Anthony Oliver Anthony, whatever his name is. Got 2 names. 2 first names. Stand back and stand by. But please don't. Please don't do that. I mentioned that I wanted to throw that on YouTube, and I talked also about how, like, sometimes I really procrastinate on the YouTube stuff. And part of the reason that I procrastinate, the editing part is one thing, although I can, like, sometimes I can do that fairly quickly, but it's just making a thumbnail. Making a thumbnail is just annoying. It's like an extra, 20 minutes or whatever that I just don't have. It's the thing that makes it difficult for me. So fortunately, a friend of the stream, Donna Macaroni, volunteered to make a YouTube thumbnail for my, and now I have to upload it now that someone has taken the time to help me assist me with this. Our friend Donna Macaroni has made a YouTube thumbnail for the conversation about this whole like astroturfed Reaganite protest folk. Seeing if I can chase the algorithm to get a few views on this one. But check this out though. I'm going to unveil now. I'm going to unveil the YouTube thumbnail. Are you ready for this? This is really fantastic. Look at this. That should be good. That's fantastic. I think that's going to be good. Maybe I'll finally get a YouTube video that someone watches. That'd be nice. Can you imagine how exciting that must be? If I actually release a YouTube video that actually gets seen by people, that would be pretty cool if you ask me. And thank you very much, Donna Macaroni, for bravely and selflessly volunteering to make that fucking amazing YouTube thumbnail. So I've never had those fudge rounds. Like I was thinking it was more of a fudgio. Like in Canada, it's like a fudgio. Hey, there she is. There's Donna Mac herself. Thank you, Donna. I thought it was more of a fudgio thing. I've never tried this, but honestly, this looks great. This looks like a great little snack. Quite frankly, I have a couple of these little Debbie's fudge rounds with a nice ice cold glass of milk. I think that would be fantastic. You're really mad about that? No, I've never seen these in Canada either. Not at all. I was thinking it was more like a fudgio situation, which are good as well, but it's more, a fudgio is more like an Oreo that's just all chocolate. This looks great though, you know? Perhaps after dinner or maybe even for a little midnight snack. Sneak one of those bad boys. I don't see what the big deal is. How would you get mad about that? Why would you get mad about people enjoying this delicious product? Yeah, these look more cakey to me, from what I can see. They look more like little cakes, like a Joe Louis or like a wagon wheel. Imagine being from America and shitting on a major American employer like Little Debbie. Exactly. Do you love America or don't you? They have filling. No, it seems to be like two little cakes with some filling, some creamy filling, and also the creamy drizzle as well on top. That's something else as well. I like how in the thumbnail I'm looking at it longingly. He's all mad about it, and I'm just like, oh man, that looks delicious. I would absolutely fuck with the fudge round. Absolutely. Yeah, we have wagon wheels. Although it might be called something different. It might be called something different. I don't know. Ordering some with my EBT on my Obama phone now. If the delivery driver's a white man, I'm going to kick him down. And I support that. I support all those things. Imagine realizing people have found some loophole in the system where they get provided this product for free of charge from the United States government and being mad at them for it. You're just mad that you haven't figured out the same scam. I encourage everyone that's on kind of like social benefits to, if you can scam the government out of a box of delicious treats, I think I support that. I think we should all support that. You've won at life at that point. When people on hard times have a treat, ugh, no. You must only suffer. You must only suffer. We don't even have fudge because we're part of the old world with crooked backs and noses, so we call it caramel. But we caramel is a different thing, though, isn't it? These are two totally different things. My daddy suffered from high taxes at his landscaping business. His daddy suffered when he bought a 3-bedroom home for $21,000. And it only went up 200% in value rather than 300. Now you're going to suffer too. They basically only sell treats at stores. This discourse comes up every few years when they catch someone selling EBT for cash. Yeah, and like I was saying the other day, it's like I'm sure that people are running scams on that kind of stuff. Like it's certainly not the majority, but sure, of course they are. But like, who cares? Why are you mad about that? That's not the reason that people's taxes are high. That's not the reason people are having a hard time getting by. Because if the few people that are running like some kind of EBT scams or paying for snacks, which like you point out is like the vast majority of what's actually available. Dick sucking factory used to pay that fee for us. It's hard times, daddy. Hard times, daddy. Got laid off at the dick sucking factory, daddy. It's dusty roads. Yeah, of course, the PPP loan scam. All the same people getting mad about it. All the same people getting mad about people on food stamps. Yes, I did take a PPP loan that I would never have to pay back. Why do you ask? I wish I had taken a loan. Because I got COVID assistance when it was going on. In retrospect now, I should have got a fucking small business loan. I do have a small business, after all. I have a small, independently run media empire. That's a business. I can't get a loan from the government to keep that afloat in tough times. That was a big misstep on my part. I did use my COVID assistance to get the computer that I started doing this stream from, so technically I used my COVID assistance from the Canadian government to start a small business. I did fuck up. Imagine how many fudge rounds a PPP loan could have bought. It's true, yeah. That's like you could buy a whole fucking garage worth. And Easelcat, we've been talking about this. They have a nice hot section at a lot of stores with meals, but they don't take EBT. That's right. And it's what we've been talking about on here. You work at Walmart for 35 hours a week. You make starvation wages and nowhere near enough to actually like live off of. So you qualify for EBT or food stamps, which is basically a subsidy to Walmart so they don't have to pay you that much. You finish your shift at Walmart and then you can't go and just pick up a rotisserie chicken on your way home. I don't know why I always go to rotisserie chicken. It's because that's just like the cheapest, easiest thing that you can buy at the store, right? If you just want a quick dinner, there's a number of different things you can do with it. You get some leftovers. It's cheap. It tastes good. A rotisserie chicken is one of the best possible things you can get. You work all day at the store, and it's like, no rotisserie chicken for you. Rotisserie chicken is goated. There's some very good rotisserie chicken meal restaurants here in Montreal, by the way. Very, very good. Anyway, I don't want to keep repeating the same things we've said over and over and over about this over the last couple of days, but it's so needlessly cruel. The cruelty with which America treats people that are struggling the most is really just never stops to make you just marvel at it, you know? The rotisserie chicken, $5 Friday, none for you. You need to buy the frozen solid $8.99 one. Yeah, exactly. And then go home after your shift and like prepare that. It's so sick. Yeah, I'll just get some fucking fudge rounds, whatever. You know? Perhaps a silly question, still figuring things out on Twitch, but can you sing karaoke without getting a strike? I mean, usually if you have copyrighted music, you just get muted. Like it doesn't. I've never actually got a copyright strike. My streams sometimes get segments of it muted because you play some piece of music that's not allowed. I've never gotten in trouble though in almost 3 years of doing this for playing like karaoke versions of songs or like MIDI versions. Like I play like MIDI versions of popular songs all the time. And it's never once been an issue. Nor it wasn't an issue yesterday for my like playing a karaoke version of a song and then singing the words myself. Oh, that fucking Dracula song is just so stuck in my head. Well, sir, I gotta say, folks, I'm almost 2 hours into the stream, and I know it was a great day yesterday in terms of like subs, and that was fantastic. But as you know, friends, every single day, like Sisyphus himself, I must let the sub bowler roll all the way back down to the bottom of the hill, and I gotta push it all the way back up again. That's how this platform works. I'm at 2 hours into the stream with 0 subs. At this point, I would just love if someone could just make the 0 any other number other than a 0. That would be really good at this point, because when we're getting into the 2 hour like level of the stream, and I'm still looking at a goose egg, it becomes psychologically damaging for me, you see. It becomes psychologically damaging. So please, if you can, friends, subscribe to TRRS. It's $5 per month. It's completely free of charge. I'm gesturing. I'm doing the presidential gesture. Bill Clinton always did that. You gesture like this. It's not threatening. You're not pointing. If you do that, you could transition into the thumb. Gesture like that with your thumb. Exactly. You don't want to point. Too aggressive. John tells me to do better. I just like normally if I wanted to inspire people to subscribe to the channel, I'd start doing something silly. I'd like dance or something. I still feel like I'm like swimming underwater right now because of the lack of caffeine. I haven't had caffeine since about 11 a.m. and it's starting to be very difficult. I was talking to your audience. That makes sense as well. That makes sense as well. I didn't say bowler, did I? Like Sisyphus himself, I must let the sub-bowler roll all the way back down to the bottom. Like Sisyphus himself, I must let the sub-bowler roll all the way back down to the... BB, thank you for the gifted sub. Look at this low energy man. Look at, we got low energy Rob here. We got sleepy Rob on here. Thank you, BB, for the gifted sub. I appreciate it. I'm here for the rotisserie chicken oratory enterprise. I got a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store the other night. And I threw some rice in the rice cooker, tore up some of the chicken and put it with the rice and added some QP mayo and chili crisp and chives and cilantro. Excellent.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Sam, thank you for the gifted sub as well. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. I'm used to it seeing 0 every time I stream. It sucks, but you're great to know.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Promise to use my Prime next time to subscribe, as I do appreciate you. Thank you, L Bob. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And thank you, Banana Grabber. Thanks, Banana Grabber, as well, for the gifted sub. Very, very kind of you, Banana Grabber. Don't grab my banana, though. I need that. It's got potassium in there. I need that potassium. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, well, that's a good start. That's a start. We can work with that. So the question is now then, the question remains, what next? Oh, this looks good. Look at that. Breakthrough News just put out something 55 minutes ago. This looks like a great conversation. We got a brand new Breakthrough News video just dropped. History of NATO destruction of Global South and CIA infiltration of Third World textbooks. This could be something good for watch for anyone that's like still holding on to that anarcho NATO Bidenist very coherent ideology, which seems to only exist here on Twitch or YouTube or whatever it is. That's been the thing for me, right, folks? Like when you talk about Russia, Ukraine, and how people have like completely just accepted the NATO chain of events or version of history that's led up to this moment, and have done this reluctant, like, well, I guess we just have to back NATO on this. It just seems to me like when you know this history, that's why learning this is so important. It gives you a kind of shield when these moments come, and you're like, and you have to ask yourself this question: should I support NATO this time? Well, I see Russia doing some stuff that I don't like. It seems pretty bad, but should I support NATO? Does that mean I have to support NATO this time? And the answer is no. No, you shouldn't. Under any circumstances. Under no circumstances should you do that. If you know this basic history, you don't need to wring your hands over this. You can just know the right answer right away. You know? You don't have to go through this whole process of getting fooled and then supporting something that you later end up going to regret, you know? It's a really easy lesson. That's why I always go to that Che clip. You know, when do we trust the imperialists? It's so easy. It's just this guideline that once you learn it, it just becomes really, really easy to figure out these things that might seem difficult at first. All these kind of like tough, kind of nuanced issues, whether it's Ukraine or Taiwan or even all these other flashpoints in China like Xinjiang or Tibet or any of these things, you can say, "Oh boy, I can't take a firm stance on this." You know, it's so thorny and people are really passionate about support, and it's like, but you don't have to. You don't have to. You can just know the right answer right away. You don't have to go through this whole process of torturing yourself or staying silent because you're afraid of getting it wrong or whatever. You know, you can just know the right answer right away. No, you don't. You see, what's the Mao quote? Like, whatever the enemy supports, we will oppose. How about that? When you see the U.S. State Department, NATO, the CIA, CSIS, British intelligence, any of these things, you see them start doing something, well, you go ahead and support the opposition to that. No matter how tricky that might be ideologically or morally for you. You know? Yeah, and that Kwame Ture quote, I mean, that was such a guideline for us as well. Like in the days leading up to the Ukraine invasion, I remember watching that, and that gives you the tools that you need to have the correct analysis. You know, it's not hard to know which way to go on these things. It can be hard to speak out or to hold this viewpoint when it becomes really, really unpopular and almost a little dangerous to do so. But it's still not hard to figure out what that position should be. Dracula can get wet. Dracula, I'm sorry. I've got to just hear it one more time. I'm sorry, I've got to hear it one more time. It's so stuck in my head. It's so stuck in my head. I have to watch it again. I'm sorry, folks.
I mine and a pirate ship or something like that. And I made a tweet that essentially said if I were on that ship, I would simply splash his ass because Dracula can't get wet.
Not accurate.
And I couldn't have been more wrong. I said Dracula can't get wet. That was wrong and I regret it. But I'm making up for it. I'm the first one to admit now that Dracula can't get wet. Dracula can't get I'm sorry, I confused you with the witch from the Wizard of Oz. My father called me, he said, how the hell could you mess up this bad? I am appalled by my reflection. For the record, I know Dracula doesn't have a reflection, but it can get wet. It takes huge balls to admit Dracula can get wet. I'll never forget. Dracula can get.
That's just been playing all day in my head. All day. The whole day. Which is nice because it replaced the shitty Rich Men North of Richmond song. I just had the thing about the fudge rounds just banging around in there. So it was nice to get it replaced with something that doesn't suck. Okay. Here is our friend Rania Kalik. Oops, no, don't want that. Talking about history of NATO, destruction of Global South, and CIA infiltration of Third World textbooks. even the stuff about third world textbooks, like I'm interested to hear about that, especially when we're fear mongering right now about China and like, oh, they're funding schools and they're doing all this propaganda. Like all the accusations, as we always go over time and time again, all these accusations always an admission. Every single time. How would you like if China was just writing our school textbooks and teaching an entire generation of kids their version of history, which happens to coincide with their continued economic and political and social domination of our country? I would actually support that personally, but this is what America's been doing around the world for a very, very long time.
And one of the things that also NATO did, and it never acknowledged, obviously when NATO bombs any place, they say, well, there was a strategic military purpose for bombing that space. They bombed also the pipes that were on the coast of Libya that delivered water.
Hello everyone, I'm Rania Kalik, and this is Dispatches. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, NATO's proponents have been trying to rebrand the organization as a military alliance for spreading freedom, democracy, and human rights. But this is a nearly impossible task given NATO's trail of destruction across the third world, such as Libya and Afghanistan, to name just a few. But military intervention is just one tool of this hybrid warfare. There's supplemental public diplomacy initiatives, otherwise understood as propaganda, with institutions like USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy and even the CIA infiltrating third world education systems to groom young minds for future regime change.
The real groomers.
Joining me to discuss the brutal history of NATO intervention and CIA infiltration of education is Aissam El-Korgli, a Libyan PhD student at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He researches the impact of contemporary imperialism on education with a particular focus on Libya. But before we jump into it, this is just the first half of this episode.
Really interesting
The second
background.
half is available for Breakthrough News members only. You can become a member at patreon.com/Breakthrough News. And as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate this show, you can also donate below on YouTube. Aissam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rania.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And you are coming to me from Libya. That's where you are right now. So that's, I think, the best topic to start on as we kind of go through this sort of overview of NATO intervention in the third world. I mean, I think the most relevant country to talk about is Libya, which gets left out of so many conversations, especially now as NATO's kind of like being rebranded as this, you know, apparently human rights organization that's going to save the world from evil Russia. So why don't we start where you are right now, Libya? I mean, obviously back in 2011, there was an uprising in Libya, very quickly hijacked. Before we knew it, there was a NATO bombing of Libya that has had repercussions that continue to take place today in a very disastrous way. So why don't you do this? Walk us through the intervention in Libya, maybe starting with the events leading up to that intervention.
Okay, sounds good. So first, one has to acknowledge that there was a general discontent with the economic situation, the political situation in the country, and a lot of the Libyan intellectuals wrote about it in 2006, 7, and 8, and 9, that they're warning that there's a disconnect between the trajectory where the country is going with its Pan-African vision, and also the national zeitgeist, if one could call it. This kind of was enlightened by after seeing the events that are happening in Egypt and in Tunisia with the uprisings in those countries. There was a general, uprising in Libya and multiple cities, especially in eastern Libya, part of the country where historically has been antagonistic against the regime. But the way that, unfortunately, a lot of people document these events in the region, especially in 2011, is that they look at protesters contesting authoritarian regime, and then they say, "Okay, look at the oppression. We need to stand against these authoritarian regimes and for the will of the people." And then, assuming that just what happened in Tahrir Square is happening in Egypt, is happening in Libya, is happening in Tunisia, it's happening all across. So there's this Egyptocentrism in the narrative. But in Libya, there were protesters, but they attacked the military barracks from day one. So as opposed to going to the Kish Square in Benghazi or the Green Square, which now become Maidan Shuhada, the Martyrs Square in Tripoli, they were attacking police stations and ransacking military equipment. And so it got militarized from day one. And so even this is from the 15th of February. And then on the 20th of February, you had 3 or 4 eastern cities in Libya that were quote unquote liberated from the regime. So they were under the control of the rebels. So that tells you that the rebels were armed from the beginning. And when one historicizes those events, they notice that also you had militants who previously served in prison, who were part of the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, are aligning with the protesters, and they're the ones who also committed the first terrorist attack in Libya during the uprisings, where they went and bombed a military barrack in eastern Libya. So now it's a military conflict from like week one. In Western Libya, it's a little bit different. There was a more just peaceful protesters, but then because of their alignments with the Eastern militant ones, there was mass repression. Now, here is the issue, is that when you have military, that is Libyan military that has trained for many, many, many years, and then rebels who had very little training fighting against an organized military, obviously the upper hand is going to come to the regime. And now that's kind of when they started to attack westwards from Eastern Libya to Sirte. Even on the 2nd of March, before NATO's intervention, by 2 weeks or so, the regime went out and said, listen, we're going to give you 6 months. You can do whatever you want in Eastern Libya. We're not going to put a blockade on you. We're not going to do anything. But then Sirte is the red line. If you try to come close to us, we're going to have to attack you. Now, comes in on the 17th of March, comes the order that the Libyan military is going to attack Eastern Libya. But note that this attack is not only on the coast, it also came to close the border from Egypt's side. Because they have intelligence, and this is based on documents that I've looked at, is that they had the reports that there were Qataris, there were French intelligence in Eastern Libya before even NATO's mandate. And when you look at the airstrikes that NATO did on the 19th of March when they intervened, they said that we did it on the coastal side, but also on the south side that is close to the Egyptian border. So this kind of paints that the rushed intervention in Libya against claims of genocide, which it wasn't genocide, it was casualties from both sides, 5 from here, 10 from there. I'm not trying to trivialize it to minimize the impact of the human lives lost, but just one has to be cognizant of how that term is strategically used in these contexts. And so that's
genocide has been weaponized
in a way,
so
this
much.
intervention that the regime is going to go and attack Eastern Libya and cleanse the population, quote unquote. And then there's also, if I may add,
it's really sinister, and I think quite grotesque about how a lot of the language that evolved out of World War II, because for the first, that was really the first time in modern history that a regime was held accountable for terrible things that happened in a war, which previously was just kind of chalked up to well, it was a war and people get tortured and blown up and maimed and massacred and genocided, and that's part of it. And holding the Nazis and the Nazi leadership and some various SS people that managed to actually get punished and not, follow up with Alan Dulles' Operation Sunrise thing, kind of created this legal framework for which you could hold regimes accountable for committing these terrible crimes. And now it seems like that entire legal framework is just weaponized and wielded by the United States of America or by the rules-based international order to go after any regime that they don't like. They just use these terms that were kind of initially used to describe the Nazis, and completely ignoring their own, escaping all culpability for their own grotesque mass murder campaigns as well. Because they're the ones that decide when this language gets used and who gets accused of what, and so it's you look at the US or Canada or its allies like Israel, and of course we can't use these terms like genocide or ethnic cleansing, and then they throw around the genocide word to go after any, whether it's the Libyan regime or whether it's in Syria or the Uyghur genocide narrative as well, which many people have kind of gleefully jumped on board with. And it's really kind of sick the way that these very serious concepts and terms that should have a strict meaning, or in Russian Ukraine is another example, the genocidal war against Ukraine. It's you can say a lot of things about it, but that's not an accurate description of what's going on there. it's really kind of sick and grotesque about how these terms and this kind of legal framework is just completely partisan and weaponized and is cynically employed basically to advance the economic and military objectives of the United States of America and its allies, its underlings like Canada and the UK and France and Germany, and their own long time participation in these exact crimes is just completely whitewashed. It's pretty sick. I thought we were the good guys, though. Well, that's the thing for me. $4.10, like what I've been saying. It's like when you do eventually realize that we're not the good guys, it really does clear up a lot of these things, doesn't it? It totally clears up a lot of the confusion about this stuff, and it makes it a lot more easier to understand, even when it's politically difficult or it's nuanced or it's tricky to talk about. It's like, should I line up alongside the USA? Should I line up alongside NATO? Should I line up alongside the AUKUS? Should I line up alongside the IMF and all these various institutions, these imperialist institutions? And when you just understand that we're the bad guys, you look at all these institutions and you say, no, I should not be standing alongside these things under any circumstances. And in fact, most of the time, I should be actually looking at where these institutions are being aimed and support the people that it's being aimed at. But again, it's tricky, it's nuanced, it's hard for people to take these big stances because people get yelled at, they get career consequences, they might even eventually start getting legal consequences like we're seeing. So I understand why it's hard on that respect, but it's not hard to understand where we should stand ourselves. It's actually very easy.
Just very quickly, there's the racial component of it. And now is the lingering impact. You probably saw it on the Tunisia-Libya border and also the migrant crises that are happening in the Mediterranean because of how Black Africans, I use that term intentionally because I'm also African. Africans look different. And the way that they're treated as they migrate. And so they said that the Libyan regime is hiring mercenaries from day one to kill Libyan protesters. So it became like African mercenaries, meaning Black Africans, fighting and killing rebels or people who look like me. So it became like Europe is coming to save Libyans from Black Africans. And that really had a political and economic impact after 2011 because Libya became less and less invested in Africa, more and more in Europe. So even Pan-Africanism now as a concept, it's like very dead in Libya's, a general political space and political conversation. So that's kind of broadly what happened in 2011.
Yeah, I mean, that anti-Blackness element is so important because you have that lie being...
Yeah, I mean, this is... $4.10. I know you're not new to the community, but like what you're saying now, I mean, this is what we talk about every day, every time these subjects come up, right? Mass media bubbles the problem. We think we're not indoctrinated. You're not immune to propaganda. Everyone in the West, in Canada and the US, no matter what like partisan side they come from, they've convinced themselves, I'm immune to this propaganda. I would never be propagandized to. We're not propagandized like one of these Russians or Venezuelans or Iranians or citizens of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea or Chinese. They're just these automatons that just have this big mass brainwashing thing that just tells them what to think and how to behave. Can you believe that? Wow, unbelievable. Couldn't be me, but really in reality, and everyone else around the world realizes this, we actually live in the most sophisticated, as you put it, influence op, propaganda bubble, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call it. It's the most highly advanced propaganda panopticon ever devised by human beings, and we've grown up in it. We've grown up in it from cradle to grave. We're living in this thing, and it absolutely warps our brains. And it really takes a lot of work to free yourself from that. And then you see all these right-wing guys going like, oh, I woke up, I took the red pill or whatever. And it's all this false class consciousness, this false consciousness stuff that's propagated by stuff with that song. And they're just as propagandized as ever while still thinking that they've become these these awoken, free-thinking individuals. The real red pill. The real red pill, as I've said many times, is a little book called State and Revolution. That's the red pill. If you want to talk about being awake or taking the red pill and you don't want to talk about Lenin, well, I don't want to hear about it.
Being spread all across Western media. It went even deeper than just Black African mercenaries being used. In Libya, there was also lies being spread about
or the Communist Manifesto or Capital.
About Gaddafi's giving them Viagra to rape Libyans. I mean, it was just completely racist lies being told that were eaten up so quickly, and of course, there was never any correction done, having to deal with that. And then there was also, of course, like the people that they were aligning with. And I know that you had sent this photo to me. Why don't you tell us what's happening in this photo here?
So in this picture, we have John McCain and Graham on the right, and he's receiving an award from...
They do this when Pan-Africanists show support for Russia, but quote a random Russian official with anti-homosexual rhetoric, then insinuate that is what also Pan-Africanists ideologically believe, even though it's a lie. But it creates the narratives that the U.S. should intervene on the basis of human rights abuses, which is infinitely more popular than past narratives that have been lies. They have weapons of mass destruction. That's such a tricky thing that we have to look out for, right? Was where we unequivocally stand with LGBTQIA plus people in our society, in our community, but we do not let, under any circumstances, NATO or the CIA or Western imperialism weaponize LGBTQIA plus issues to drum up support for their violence and their imperialism. And I know a lot of people seem to have a tricky time with that on both sides, frankly. On both sides. People get very tripped up by this, but as I've talked about before, that's really the ideological stance I think that we have to continue to hold.
Abdel Hakim Bil Haj. They're both receiving an award from Abdel Hakim Bil Haj. Now, Abdel Hakim Bil Haj, I can just summarize the Libyan Islamic fighting group's history in one sentence from a book called The Global NATO and Catastrophic Failure in Libya. And it said what the Libyan Islamic fighting group were not able to do in the 90s, they were able to do in 2011 thanks to the help of NATO. And so their history is that Abdel Hakim Bil Haj went and trained in Afghanistan with the Mujahideen there, with the help and training of both MI6 and the CIA. And then 2006 or 7, after the agreement between Libya and the United States and Britain to try to get all the quote-unquote terrorists together, he was deported. His plane was down from Malaysia, and then he was extradited to UK and then to Libya. So he spent some years in prison. And then he also signed an agreement in 2009 to denounce violence against the Libyan state. So now he became a Libyan citizen with full rights, and he denounced violence. So the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, they even published this 500-page book about how violence should be constructed never against the Libyan state, because the Libyan state is not, quote-unquote, infidel state or, communist or whatever. But then in 2011, this guy gets flown in, gets supported, and he's in charge of one of the rebel groups that came and quote unquote liberated Tripoli. And there's also a Frans van Kater, I don't really watch it, but there's a report on how it's surprising to see NATO supporting this particular figure, who is is a fundamentalist in that sense. But then obviously the United States never have a fixed policy towards somebody. They're very chameleon-like. They always change. Sometimes somebody is an enemy. The next day is a friend, sometimes friend or foe. And this is an example of one of them, where you see after the regime change in Libya receiving this award from a known terrorist, essentially.
Yeah, it's really stunning. But again, it's a part of like an ongoing pattern, and we're going to get a bit into that pattern. But before we do, I'm curious because I think it's really important to emphasize this, especially at a time when you have NATO being built up, you have more countries joining NATO. You also have NATO being kind of, in a sense, refashioned to be like an anti-China alliance in addition to what it already is, which is this anti-Russia alliance. And it really is, again, like I mentioned earlier, being rebranded as this like organization that's out to like spread human rights and save the free world, if you will. So but of course we never talk about what happened after the NATO intervention in Libya. So what did happen after the NATO intervention in Libya? Did
like
Libya...
we've been pointing out, and we're going to get to this in this interview as well, like Eugene talked about with us yesterday, how that intervention still to this day is leading to like ISIS and Boko Haram, and these terrorist groups are still operating on the continent as a result of that intervention today. Blowback.
You see freedom.
Blowback. We create the enemy and then we fight the enemy over and over and over and over and over again. And it's happening now in Ukraine and people can't see it. It's so frustrating. It's happening again in Ukraine and people can't see it. The same playbook. We arm the extremists. We destabilize the region. The extremists become the enemies. We fight the enemies. Like, fuck. And we arm and train other militias to fight these enemies, like just like clockwork every time. I really wish people could see this. Like it's frustrating to me, actually. Really, the last 2 years in Ukraine and everything, and how many people seem to have missed this. It's unfortunate, actually.
And democracy like reigns supreme. And what are the lingering impacts of that intervention 12 years later? I mean, you're in Libya right now.
Yeah, so I'll start with the normative sense of democracy where people equated with voting. In 2012, we did have voting for, this traditional way where you dip your finger in ink and then you can walk around, oh my God, I voted. But those elections, they sidelined roughly 80-90% of the people who had political experience, because we had this law that isolated anybody who had alliance or allegiance or affiliation with the former regime. So meaning that anybody who could be, let's document that Libya was great socialist people of Libyan Arab Jamahiriya, and there's an emphasis on the socialist. And so anybody with socialist ideals, with ideals that are essentially, let's be critical of the West, be critical of imperialism, be cognizant of our role as a third world country. All of these voices were sidelined. So,
and I'm sure, I don't remember the Twitter discourse as much around Libya at the time, but I'm sure it was a lot of the same thing. Like all the left, the Libyan left, all hates Gaddafi. They're all fighting Gaddafi. Exactly how we're hearing in Ukraine. Oh, you're a leftist? Well, why don't you support the Ukrainian left? They're all fighting with Azov battalion right now. First of all, that's not true. Like he's pointing out, it's like all these voices get silenced right away at the very beginning of these conflicts. And their political parties are banned. And many of these actual people that are on the left in Ukraine are being locked up and being beaten and tortured and being claimed to be, Russian sympathizers. Didn't Twitter really take off with the Arab Spring? Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting in retrospect to think about how that became this really big mass psyop over the entire world. I remember being so into the Arab Spring, like when it started with the whole Egypt thing and Mubarak and the Tahrir Square protests. It was exciting and it was exhilarating, and I felt like this was something that needed to be supported. I remember, Mubarak was he was the State Department's guy in Egypt. He's a friend of the Clinton family. It didn't feel like some big op or some big thing that was going to turn into an even larger pro-America psyop, but whatever good intentions that there may have been, it rapidly got used as a weapon to destabilize all these regimes that had been a thorn in the side of Western imperialism for years. But yeah, it is fascinating. That really was when Twitter took off, and I think it became really an effective tool of the security state to spread information about things. And you saw the beginning of these kind of the way that these alternative media companies such as Vice that had this kind of hipster credibility in the Arab Spring really did take that hipster credibility and start using it to drum up support for these like CIA armed rebels in Libya, for example. There's that famous like Vice piece that's like meet the badass Libyan rebels that are going after Gaddafi or something. Like, it's really fucking sinister, actually, the way this mass movement, whatever organic beginnings that it had, got totally co-opted by Western imperialism, and all these Western media outlets they became kind of like useful tools of Western imperialism to drum up support, but in like a cool indie anarchist way. You know? Very sinister stuff.
How could we choose between people who are pro-West or pro-West? So you had like the Muslim Brotherhood or you had the liberals. And that was essentially what the fight was about. So it was like either you have Muslims running the country in a neoliberal fashion or liberals running the country in a neoliberal fashion, and both are pro-West. And what ended up happening, almost like 40 to 60 split between those two. But in 2014, we had another elections that also had a lot of exclusion. And then the country still, they didn't recognize the results, and then fighting between Muslim Brotherhood militias and the liberal ones took place, which really causes a rift between Eastern and Western Libya because of the results of these. Now, on an economic level, anything that is related to Africa, in the sense of, because Libya's economy was, when one looks at the documents from the Central Bank of Libya, they would notice that 52% or so was expenditure on consumer goods and services.
Just give me a moment, okay, folks? I'm just going to go to the bathroom.
On development. And that part of GDP was being most of it spent on development in Libyan African portfolios, Libyan African kind of development models that were happening in Uganda, in Kenya, Tanzania, in South Africa, you name it, in numerous countries. And now, two things happened, is that you had a national disinterest from Libya because of the new leadership. And second, you had imperialism, that is the role of sanctions. The fact that Libya has $200 billion being frozen, 34 of which are in the United States, and they're being used by the United States as interest-free loans. And then you had roughly 70 billion frozen in Switzerland, and they take interest rate as if they're not frozen. And so there's a whole drainage happening to the Libyan economy, and obviously Libyans themselves are experiencing that, and it's being heartfelt with the skyrocketing inflation, power cuts. And one of the things that also NATO did, and it never acknowledged, obviously when NATO bombs any place, they say, well, there was a strategic military purpose for bombing that space. They bombed also the pipes that were on the coast of Libya that delivered water. Libya had this, still continues to have the Great Man-Made River, and it's a river that drags water from the aquifers in the middle of the desert and then transports it to the coastal areas, and it was bombed in 2011. And so all of these projects require a lot of electricity. And so when you have power cuts and so forth, people don't get access to water. And so a lot of the infrastructural issues in Libya have stagnated since 2011, essentially. And right now we have this continuous policy by the United Nations, which is spearheaded largely by the United States and UK, and that is to make Libya continuously to be under the mandate of the United Nations, meaning that if Libya, let's say, did a revolution or somehow, and they were in charge of their own economy and so forth, it would not be recognized by the United Nations. Because we're under Chapter 7 of the United Nations, meaning that we have no authority over our own destiny. The destiny comes from UN. And that's why the United Nations always, when they speak about Libya, the recognized Libyan government of Abdelhamid al-Dbeiba or Faiz al-Sarraj and so forth. And these two names are the former and current prime ministers, respectively. So there's a loss of agency for Libya to act in geopolitical manners since 2011, essentially.
Wow, that's incredibly important, that what you just highlighted in terms of Libya essentially will never be able to, according to this UN mandate, have its own sovereignty, is what that means. And that is, of course, going along with in the sort of simpler format, the NATO intervention collapsed the Libyan state, has left it in the situation where it's a bunch of different warring factions trying to maintain control of the country. In this process, I think one of the most popularized concepts of the aftermath of the NATO intervention was the idea that there was people being sold in open air slave markets at one point. I'm not sure if that's still happening, but Libya has also become this place that the EU has basically like outsourced its sort of border patrol policies to Libya. So that's one of the ways I think Libya gets aid, if I'm not mistaken, is by becoming this kind of like country that has to then police migrants from making their way to the EU, which it's like, that's like one of the only, sort of economic things coming into Libya. It's very upsetting. And it's also just, where did all these people go who were going on and on in 2011 and 2012 about how we need to restore, we need to bring democracy and freedom to Libya. Those voices completely disappeared after the West got what it wanted. And like, it didn't matter what happened afterwards. And I think it's important. We're talking about this not just because what happens in Libya still matters. I mean, it's a country that still exists. People are still living there. But also, NATO is intervening, or, sort of like underhandedly intervening in Ukraine right now. And I wanted to show this other photo that you had sent, which is, can you describe what's taking place here?
Because so many times. We're going to give you whatever you need, says John McCain in that clip. We can give you whatever you need, or Lindsey Graham. We'll give you whatever you need. Just fight the Russians. As long as you kill Russians, we'll give you whatever you need. And then people really look around and be like, how was Russia threatened? I can't believe they felt threatened and like that was a security threat. Are you saying really that NATO or the United States had anything to do with this? Really? This tanky pro-Putin position? And it's like they're literally on video. Hanging out with these guys and being like, yeah, we'll give you whatever weapons you need. Just kill Russians. As long as you're killing the Ruskies. And people really just be like, that's disgusting that you would suggest that we were involved. It's so bizarre to me, honestly. It's bizarre. How dare you suggest that? Just silly.
Speaks to the pattern that you were talking about in terms of what took place in Libya, in terms of who NATO aligned with.
I think so too, Dakadoon.
So I'll start with...
you say Libya seems to have been an eye-opening moment for China and Russia. Seems like it confirmed for them that the U.S. will come for them militarily. Absolutely. Russia saw what happened to Libya. And then when America was trying the exact same shit, the exact same strategy, when NATO was trying the exact same strategy in Syria, Putin and Russia put their foot down and said, no, we're not going to let you do this. That was the beginning of the shift. That was the beginning of multipolarity, like as we've come to understand it, like over the last couple of years. That was the first moment. So it does seem like Libya was a really big flashpoint to that.
Kind of a tangent. While I was graduating from St. Olaf College in Minnesota, the person on the left, Amy Klaubacher, she came and gave a talk during my graduation, and so everybody was clapping and shouting. But at that time, I wasn't cognizant of her doing
talking about DPRK. If you're in the DPRK and you see the way NATO's acting in Libya, it didn't demilitarize but denuclearized, right? They gave up their nukes, right? Gaddafi, when he was trying to be like a Western ally for a brief time. And if you're DPRK, like you see that, you're like, why would we ever demilitarize? Why would we ever give up our nukes? Or Iran as well. Look at the Iran deal. They make all these concessions. They sign the Iran deal. And America immediately just tears it up and spits right in their faces. If you're DPRK or China or Russia or any other country, you're like, why would we possibly try to deal with this nation as if they're like sane, or as if they have good intentions, or are going to follow through with any of these promises that we've been talking about? It's like, this is the theme that keeps coming up. It came up a lot yesterday talking to Eugene, but this is the theme that keeps coming up. Like, why people are so surprised. They look around and like at the actions of Russia or China or any of these places that we're talking about, and like, how do they're so outrageous the way they're asking. It's so illogical. It's so irrational. And it's like, it's actually extremely rational. If you have a basic understanding of the way that the United States has engaged with the rest of the world, not even since World War II, but just in the last decade, just in recent history. It's like, yeah, they've observed the way that United States and NATO and these imperialist institutions have acted and conducted themselves, and they adjust what they're doing accordingly to that. I mean, it's really not that complicated to understand.
Ukraine because I didn't follow the situation closely at that point. But it's you have the same two people, or three essentially. You have Nancy Graham, Amy, and John McCain, who have orchestrated the regime change in Libya. And the regime change in Libya, obviously, it's a way to make Libya kind of an unstable enough country that has internal conflicts, but is run by pro-West people who continue to produce the necessary goods that the West needs. So there's this quote, I forgot from whom, but it's like, whatever the US intervenes and destroys a country, for some reason, always the oil continues to be exported. So oil in Libya is still being exported, still being delivered to Europe. And even when the onset of the war in Ukraine started in 2022, there was all these sanctions imposed on Russia. There was a question of what should Libya do?
Yeah, for sure.
And we had some internal conflicts in Libya that we stopped exporting oil just right before the war started in Ukraine. And then once the war started, we had foreign pressure to continue to export oil to bring down the prices. And so Libya plays a role in the sense that it is obedient to the West's demands. But it's exactly...
You really could be smart enough not to send the same crew to Kiev. I mean, that's how belligerent they are, right? That's how just like, they just conduct this shit right out in the open, because it's like, who's going to stop us? Who's going to stop us? What is the media? Is the fucking media going to say anything? Oh, I'm so scared. Who's going to stop us? Like, why not? They're completely open about it. And that was the attitude. But now that they have nations actually starting to step up and say, like, no, we're not going to let you act like that. Now they're like, what? It's just incompatible with the way that they engage with the rest of the world. What do you mean, no? What do you mean we're not just going to go in and change the government here in Syria? What do you mean we're not just going to arm and fund a proxy war right on your border? No, what are you talking about? You're not allowed to say no. But that's multipolarity, right? That's what that means. It means that more and more of these places, often victims of imperialism, are willing to take this stance, and they're not going to get pushed around anymore. It's very upsetting for people that live here, but it's completely understandable, I think, if you've been paying attention to this stuff. Dear Chad, a correction to my last comment. Putin correctly referred to Rabbi by his birth name, Rasputin Rususki. That's not actually accurate. That's not my birth name. That's not true. Even the threat of Wagner seems to be having an effect on France and the US and Africa, and it's no coincidence at all that we're seeing like Al-Qaeda and these militant groups on the African continent that were cut their teeth in Libya and are operating out of the chaos and instability of Libya are now going after the Russians and going after Wagner. It's not a coincidence at all.
Same recipe that happened to Ukraine in 2014, it happened to Libya, is that you try to remove a country that is sovereign and people choosing their own faith, that is based on popular demands, to a country that is pro-West, shattered, nationalist, and that is, and obviously aligns with World Bank and IMF policies, because we know what happened in Ukraine is the same thing that happened in so many other countries, that they were aligning with taking loans from Russia as opposed to the IMF, and then the ousting, the documents for the National Endowment Democracy and Victoria Nuland and so many others. They're saying right now Ukraine is in the orbit of the United States, and so the recipe for regime change and so forth is being applied continuously by the United States, and Libya and Ukraine are not any different from what happened in 2011-14, and these two faces, or three at least, resemble that.
Very well said. And that brings us back to an issue that, you had already started discussing, or you had referenced, and that's the issue of Afghanistan. Again, speaking to this pattern of who the U.S. in particular ends up aligning with, why don't you give us a bit of an overview of how that relates to Afghanistan? And by the way, another country where NATO played a huge role in intervening. Of course, that intervention from the US goes back even further. But please, Afghanistan.
So I'll start with a quote from John Pilger, where he has access to documents that I don't have access to, but he said at some point that there was a US leak in Kabul from the embassy, and where it said that the demise of the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan is the intentional goal, and this is me paraphrasing, and the intentional goal of the United States, regardless of any social and economic, negative social economic impact it has on the Afghan people. So there was the intention of regime change in Afghanistan before even the funding and the support of the Mujahideen. So you had a country that was run by the PDPA, People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, where they had social and economic equal rights, between men and women. You had the literacy rate, very little. Social welfare policies were amazing. So it was a country that is commendable. And some tangential history, Libya supported also the PDPA. But a lot of people say, oh my God, that they're communist. They actually were not necessarily, they had socialist tendencies, but they never aligned with the Soviet Union. Otherwise, they would have joined, right? But essentially, what they did is that you had a country that was successful, that is creating its own development model, and almost in a sense, again, non-alignment. But then the United States didn't want that. And so they funded these mujahideen and trained them and armed them for many, many years to weaken the Soviet Union. And I would like to eventually to ask you to present a picture that maybe later on, is that one of the battle of ideas that the United States fights is not just media, but it's also education. And this is kind of largely my research. And a lot of people become very glad when they see aid coming from the US aid, or they have NGOs being funded by the US aid. But the US aid, one of its leaders back in the 60s, they asked him, why do you do so much aid? And then they said that this aid that we give to people is a way to dissuade countries to become communist. But now we go to the 1980s. The US aid gave roughly $50 million to the University of Nebraska to write textbooks. And these textbooks are for the Mujahideen. So these textbooks are to be used by the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, the Taliban essentially. And so when there was an article by Mike Davis called A for Allah and J for Jihad, and I'll be using some of the quotes, is that you open the textbooks that teaches alphabet, and their alphabet is Pashto, is similar to Arabic, so I was able to understand some of them. It says obviously A, Alif, the first letter is Allah, or means God, and then B is T is Tufang, so it means a rifle, and so and then Jim is for jihad. So a lot of the words that are introduced in the curriculum are very militant in the Islamic fundamentalist sense. Now, they're the second grade book when students start to read and write, or at least somewhat literate. One of the books reads the story of a young schoolboy walking back from school, and then he got home, and then his mom asked him, did you notice anything coming back from school? And then he said, yes, I saw a dead Russian soldier, and then I cut his head off. And then she said, why didn't you cut his limbs off, meaning arms and legs? And then the boy said, they were already cut off. This is a second grade textbook in Afghanistan and being produced by the United States Agency for International Development.
Fucking hell.
And now if you go to third grade, they're teaching you in mathematics. So all of these, be it the language or be it the mathematics, they're all being politicized in the sense of trying to build this hatred for Russians and normalize the violence against them in a very voyeuristic, glorifying violence fashion. This third grade,
and as we've been talking about, like we were talking about this with Eugene yesterday, and as has been repeatedly coming up when we talk about Niger or Mali or Burkina Faso, and like the pro-Russian sentiment there in South Africa, see this as well, the pro-Russian sentiment all across the continent and in Latin America also. It's like they're writing textbooks to try and like propagandize kids to detest Russia and to want to kill Russians. But if you understand that history, you know that Russia has not played the same kind of like brutal, horrific, exploitative colonialist role on the continent that America and Britain and France and Portugal and Spain and the Dutch have, and others, you know?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
My, how the time flies.
Well, that was weirdly sped up there. 10,000 sandwiches, thank you so much. 33 months of tier 2. Thank you, 10,000 sandwiches. Almost 3 years, 10,000 sandwiches. That's a long time. But you know what I mean, though? It's like they've gone through this big process of trying to convince Africans or people around the world that Russia's their enemy, that they should pick up a rifle or pick up a bomb and kill Russians with it. But the fact is, Russia just does not have the same violent colonial legacy as America does and as these other formerly colonialist countries do. Which was all the more insulting when people in like Eastern Europe, in Hungary and Czech Republic, try to suggest that they were colonized by Russia, just like Africa was colonized by England and France and Spain and Portugal and the Dutch and the Americans. Like, it's just absolutely insulting to try and compare these two things. This narrative that like that's what was going on in the Soviet Union, that it was just like a colonization process, just like what was going on in Africa. I mean, it's actually like spitting in the face of the victims of colonialism to suggest that there's any comparison between these two things. And people in Africa know that, you know? Not that everyone on the continent is one big amorphous blob that all agrees with each other, but like people around the world understand this history. And because we're so historically ignorant in the West, we assume that everyone else has the same understanding of history that we've been taught, that we've been propagandized to us, you know? But they don't. They live in like the real world and they understand the role that we have played. I mean, PM TRRS, I'm certainly not an expert on Wagner Group or anything or how this shit works. But I mean, I would say that they are an arm of state foreign policy. I think that's my understanding of how they kind of operate, with maybe a certain measure of independence. But I don't think that's inaccurate to suggest that they are an arm of Russian foreign policy, just not with a sort of degree of separation between them and the state. No, neither can I. I can't think of anything that would be neutral either. This, Rob, is where young Eastern Europeans would cut you off in chat and spew their usual BS about how the Soviet Union inside the Warsaw Pact countries were not just as bad, but worse than the Western powers. Because they don't know their own history, and they certainly don't know the history of Western imperialism. And they're reading CIA-written textbooks like this one. You know, it's not just the African continent where this has been going on, and all these former Warsaw Pact countries. They've been taught an alternate version of history since the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Textbook in mathematics says that if a mujahid is fighting 50 Russian soldiers and he kills 23, how many Russians
CIA leaflets
fled?
From a C-130. Yeah.
So to show the weakness of the Russian soldiers. Now, if you go to fourth grade and teach them multiplication and dividing and so forth, it says the distance between a mujahid and a Russian soldier is 3,200 kilometers. Meters. And if a bullet of a rifle, Kalashnikov, AK-47, flies at the speed of 800 meters per hour, how many seconds does it take for it to kill the Russian in the forehead?
Teaching this to kids.
And so these books, and so now...
That's one way to learn arithmetic.
Exactly. And you can reproduce these textbooks for any country that despises Russia. Right now, you can give it to all NATO countries and they would glorify those textbooks. And so, but then that's kind of the United States. It fames itself that it promotes peace and, nonviolence and dialogue and democracy and freedom.
Absolutely,
and
young
it
man.
still does the same thing.
This is what
now,
they say that they teach their kids in DPRK, but what they teach kids in DPRK is an accurate version of what they went through as a people and as a nation, which is the correct, inarguable truth, which is that the United States and Western imperialists massacred 2 million people in the country and destroyed every single bit of infrastructure in the country because they dared to try and, after bravely and heroically expelling the fascist Japanese occupation, they had the audacity to try and implement a nationalist, socialist. Sorry, that's not a good way of phrasing that, obviously. But nationalist in the way it was a kind of nationalist uprising against the colonial occupation of the Japanese. And they wanted to have a government that was rooted in socialism, and specifically Marxism-Leninism. Yeah, misspoke a little bit there, John. The anti-Rob Clippers are going to have a field day with that one, but I hope people know what I'm talking about. Not the idea of nationalism. German nationalism bad, United States nationalism bad, Canadian nationalism bad, British nationalism bad, Korean nationalism, Vietnamese nationalism. Nationalism when it's leading and contributing to a liberatory decolonial movement, Pan-Africanist nationalism. These are good things. Colonial nationalism versus liberatory. I know you all understand the difference for that. Maybe if there's some anti-Rob clip and shippers out there, maybe they might have a field day with that one, but I think we all understand. We do need to have a Battle at Lake Changan movie night. Absolutely. I still haven't seen it. I think we might have actually had one already, Dimitri, but I wasn't there for it, so I think you're right. Yeah. I think the films are too easy on the Americans. Yeah, I do like seeing more and more foreign films like that, whether it's China or elsewhere, that does depict America as the enemy, even if it's not quite the same treatment that they would give other, their own enemies. Anyway, let's continue this video.
Oh, did this thing stop only in the 80s, maybe during Cold War or something like that? No. I can speak, I didn't give you any pictures, but since 2014, the National Endowment of Democracy have been funding the revision of Ukrainian textbooks, such that they start to glorify the history of the nationalist Stepan Bandera, and they use this term that we need to remove the Homo Sovieticus of Ukraine. So Ukrainians see themselves as part of a larger Soviet Union, remove any traces of that of the curriculum, and try to create a more nationalist, isolated Ukraine, or at least aligned with the West. And there are endless examples of this. But then the question then comes, how come that the United States, intellectuals, they don't speak about these things? They don't say, listen, how come it's contradictory to our values that we are promoting Islamist education, or because it contradicts the U.S. government funding a religion, because there's a whole separation of the state and the church. The United States, there's this quote in 2002, after people realized that the funding for the Mujahideen has taken place. It said that these books that we produced by the US aid, which is taxpayer money, unfortunately I'm not even a citizen, I pay taxes in the United States, and this is the boomerang effect, is that these books, they don't say they were produced by the United States. And that's the only loophole. But I'm like, you still are funding and producing the ideology of terrorism in of itself. And I'll conclude with the last thing about US aid, unless if you want to return to it later, but even in Iraq in 2003, after the bombing and the regime change and everything, the US aid comes in with millions of, tens of millions of dollars to rebuild the schools. And they obviously, when they want to rebuild something, they outsource it to American companies. They don't allow national companies of Iraq to actually get the money and rebuild. And so there's a whole kind of outsourcing that happens. And then the schools, textbooks, they back in the 90s and the early 2000s, they were obviously Ba'athist nationalists. They despise the United States. They despise vassal states in the region, namely Kuwait because of the history between the two, but it's also any country that had foreign military bases. So it was very nationalist curriculum. And it glorified Saddam Hussein in that sense and his party. But then US aid collaborates with UNESCO, which is supposed to be a political United Nations agency, and they start writing new forms of textbooks that erased anything that had to do with third world nationalism, erased anything that had to do with Iraq's role in offsetting, Western imperialist influences in the region. And so you had Iraqis not knowing right now what is the history of their country. Why is their country destroyed? And the exact same recipe has happened in Libya. In Libya, since 2011, they removed anything from the curriculum starting from 1969. So we don't know our history. Students are not being taught what has happened in the last 60 years of Libya. And so it's again, the same recipe being used after destruction of a country.
That's really alarming because we can't take for granted the importance of history. I'm talking to you from Lebanon, right? Like Lebanon doesn't have any sort of national understanding or sort of like a unified understanding of the Civil War in this country, for example. So everyone just kind of gets it from their family. It's not even looked at. And then the dominant narratives that spread in the mainstream are, of course, narratives that'll benefit the West, that'll benefit the US, benefit Israel, this sort of thing. So it's the way that history is understood is so important. We have that issue in the US, where it becomes contentious in certain states about the way people understand the Civil War and whether it was really about slavery or not, and this sort of thing. So that absolutely applies to these third world countries. And I didn't know that the U.S. played a role in textbooks in Iraq post-invasion, and it perfectly makes sense to want to make sure that Iraqis forget about, their history and third world nationalism. That I know you also wanted to comment about Nicaragua because you had mentioned to me when we were talking about what we wanted to discuss in this episode, that there was a role played in the education in Nicaragua following this legislative coup against the Sandinistas. Can you give us a bit of an overview of that as well?
Some leftist based in Canada. Yes. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Clincher, hello. Thanks for the raid. What's up, raiders? Thank you for joining. How was the Clincher raid today? Hope it was good. I'm Rob. Hello. What do you think of my shirt? Sound off in the chat about my shirt if you like that. Also, if you can, folks, follow. If you could give me a follow. I'm 4 followers away from 8.9K, which does seem like a kind of arbitrary number. I recognize that, but every follow helps at the moment. So if you can, please follow. Thanks again for the raid. Let's continue this.
So this will be tied to Libya, actually. So one, Nicaragua, Sandinista movement, Ortega, we can have an analysis of his policies maybe on a different point, but one of the things that I try when looking at U.S. interventions on education spaces is that how they impact third world nationalism. And so I've looked at how once Ortega took power at the Sandinista movement, they had the revolution. They were supported by Libya. So that's actually one of the things that Libya did as well at the time, is that they obviously nationalized the education system, made it very central, but it's also allowed on popular education. And so they allowed new forms of textbooks being produced by the state that give agency to local organizations, to peasants, to different civic actors on the ground at the micro level. So it wasn't necessarily centralized in that sense. But given that this structure exists and the revolutionary values of the regime were able to transcend from macro to micro, the National Endowment of Democracy, they funded the opposition, which I forgot what it's called, but the opposition in the 1990s. There's a great book called Promoting Polyarchy by William Robinson, and he details how this kind of legislative coup took place against Ortega. Now, but Ortega is back. But what essentially happened is that once the National Endowment of Democracy funded this opposition, and the opposition took power, which was very pro-U.S. and allowed the U.S. to do its malign activities in Nicaragua, one of the things that the National Endowment of Democracy did, NED, is that that they contracted with the International Foundation of Electoral Systems. And so they also changed the structure of democracy in the country to be less, to be more of kind of musical chairs of choosing one person to run the country with the hope that this person be responsive to the people's demands, as opposed to a decentralized form of direct popular democracy. So that's on a democratic level. But then on the education level, they use the exact same structure of centralized revolutionary values to instill regressive, Christian-centric, without, obviously Christianity could be perceived both good or bad in the sense of revolutionary or, theology of liberation, or something as, a reactionary and regressive and oppressive. And so they instilled that reactionary, oppressive, regressive form of Christianity in the curriculum. And that had an impact on also how the revolutionary zeitgeist in the country was perceived and how it dwindled after a while. Now, and this is what a lot of critical educators, be it Paulo Freire or any of his lineage, people who follow his tradition of critical pedagogy, they warn against centralization of education. And what I mean by it is that when the state controls every single thing, what's to be taught, how it's taught, and how it's assessed, like who writes the exams and everything. And because if the country gets hijacked by regressive reactionary forces, they would instill their values in this centralized system. But now, this is what happened in the 1990s in Nicaragua. Shift 25 years or so later, in 2018, the International Foundation Electoral System, which gets funding from the National Endowment of Democracy, which gets funding and directives from the CIA. There's a whole connection between those three. And I think maybe I should pause for a bit to clarify that connection, is that you had CIA doing dirty work, and still does, for the past 70 years or so, but then given the backlash that it got from the numerous coups and the assassinations, they started outsourcing it, and then outsourcing it to the National Endowment of Democracy. They said, instead of doing coups by overt actions and so forth, we need to maybe use soft power. They use that term. And so Ronald Reagan, 1983, established the National Endowment of Democracy, conservative, liberal, and in the sense, obviously, when people say conservative and liberal, they think it's two different things. They align in so many ways. But essentially what they have done since the 1983 is that they funded the International Foundation Electoral System to start writing civic education textbooks in Libya. So think that Libya in 2011 and before, we were a national sovereign country with our own textbooks being produced by Libyans with Libyan ideas and revolutionary values or whatever. Now, after 2011, we ask help from the Americans because allegedly they have democracy since 1776 and they should teach us a lesson. And so the IFES comes and writes these civic textbooks. And in 2020, when I read them for the first time, I did not know who wrote them and who funded them and so forth. I thought it was literally written by Libyans, and I was surprised by the amount of focus on liberalism. And maybe I should pause also to explain what I mean by it, is the focus on rights, your rights and responsibility. And this very, Samir Amin calls it thin form of democratic values. And this idea is that I need, as a citizen, I need to, they have certain lists of things that a good citizen should do. One of the best things to do is to vote, and the least that is you keep a good hygiene. And so there is nothing about protesting, about the regime, about challenging it, about a status quo, what does it mean? So all of the things that we have had before about revolution, about the values of equality and so forth, have been reduced to minimalist acts that you can check off the box.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Rania. Very informative as always. I could vote right now. I'm so incensed. I'm incensed as well. I agree. And they said, what are you talking about? It's in the U.S., you can't just vote. You can also protest. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to freedom of assembly. Isn't that amazing? That's what separates the beautiful freedom of the United States of America with all these other authoritarian countries. And like after a huge, massive, historic, nationwide uprising in relation to police violence, in relation to police just arbitrarily executing citizens in the street. You can have a massive, historic, nationwide series of uprisings against that, and which can result in more money eventually going to police, who then continue killing people at an even higher rate than they did previously. That's how much that freedom of assembly means, and many people had their lives ruined, and many people were killed as part of those protests. There's people still in jail as a result of those protests. And police are out there killing more people than they were previously. With an increasing number of people cheering it on to boot. That's exactly right. Well, folks, I'm 3 hours and 12 minutes into this stream. So I'll just take another brief moment to remind you that if you can, folks, please, not only should you support the work that Rania does with Breakthrough News, and I put the link in the chat if you want to make sure you give them a follow or support Breakthrough News as much as you can. Breakthrough News also the home of Eugene Puryear, who visited us yesterday for a fantastic discussion. Really appreciate the work they do. Please support that. And also, please support this show as well. We're 3 hours and 15 minutes into this thing. I think I'm going to go till 7. I don't think I have it in me to go longer than 4 hours. I think I'm going to say goodbye at 7 p.m. So if you can, folks, please. I don't know if the 50 sub karaoke goal is going to be met tonight. I kind of suspect that it is not, frankly. And you know what? That's okay.
You can count on me. You're going to have
that
good
is
old
okay.
Rob to talk you through all this.
That is totally fine. Thank you very much, Diego, for the gifted sub. Next, whenever that day comes next time, I will do a fantastic performance of Betty Davis Eyes by Kim Carnes. Doesn't have to be today. Gotta rest up before movie night. Exactly, Goth Angle Center. We got movie night, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Coen Brothers classic comedy Burn After Reading, which we are watching at 9:15 in the Discord server. So for anyone else, though, that wants to support this stream, every little bit helps. It's the only way that I'm able to continue doing this program every day here on twitch.tv, is if people subscribe and help me make my little number go up. So is there a brave hero? Is there a brave hero that wants to step up like Diego just did? A few generous subscribers or gifters could get me to a point where I can not get to the goal for today. And yesterday we surpassed it. So it's like, it all kind of evens out. But at least gets to a point where it's not psychologically damaging to spend my entire day doing something that really didn't amount to anything in that respect. Twitch needs to add an EBT button so we can give Rob a few fudge rounds. That'd be great. If there was just some kind of like a shoot or whatever, and you could just dump snacks on me directly rather than subscribing. Eventually I should just get some kind of like a feeding tube. I can have some kind of like protein mush or water or whatever in 2 separate tubes. I don't even have to sustain myself. And then maybe I could get a little spurt of protein mush from the chat. People could cash in their channel points to give me a spurt of protein mush and sustain me for another precious few moments.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you for the gifted sub, Ben. I appreciate it. Thank you for that. I just don't have the energy to dance. Sometimes I dance and do silly stuff, and that encourages people to subscribe, but I just don't have it in me today. I'm absolutely going to go and pick up some soda in between now and the movie night. If I don't have a diet soda, I'm going to not be able to make it. I will not make it. Do you have an Amazon list? Because I think you could actually buy some fudge rounds at the EBT there. I actually do have an Amazon wish list, although I don't even know what's on it anymore. I kind of forget to talk about that. There's a few books in there. And I think there's Operation Paperclip. I already have that. Get rid of that. And there's a pretty cool MIDI controller as well. Bunch of books. The final form of capitalism. Viewers feed the streamer directly with a feeding device which activates when subs. I might as well just immerse myself into a fucking Matrix tank. For your amusement. And you can get me some nourishment. What time is movie night? Is 9:15 p.m. See, when I search for, I can't add fudge rounds. We don't have fudge rounds in Canada. I just tried to put them on. I just tried to put some fudge rounds on my Amazon wish list, and they don't even come up when I search Amazon for them. That would have been a funny bit. But no fudge rounds for me. No Little Debbie for me. More like freedom rounds. Yeah. So, folks, does any other brave hero want to step up and support this stream? Look at me. Do I need to do my malnourished Victorian child voice? Is that the only thing that's going to get people to subscribe today? Oh, please, chat. Oh, please, sir. Won't you donate a sub? Won't you donate a sub? And mayhaps I can trade it for some medicine to cure me brother's rickets. I'm just a wee street urchin, selling content on the street corner, and I could ever so use your £5 to purchase a subscription, and you can rent several tiny images to use in Twitch chat, and mayhaps I can afford a spot of bread, a few crumbs of bread, a few crusts.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Himbo Slice, thank you. Thank you very much, Himbo.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
I'm a poor boy too, lad, but here are a few tiny bits from me pocket. Good day and gang. Easelcat, thank you for the 100 friend coin. And I know times are tough for everybody. Believe me, I understand that. And as much as I try to pressure and guilt and cajole people into subscribing, I do realize it's just not an option for every single person. But if it is an option for you, if you're someone that's fortunate enough to have some disposable income and you're here now, remember, that's the only way that this show stays on the air, is if the little number goes up. That is the fundamental deal that's at play here. Ice cream, so good. Hello, Governor. Hello, Governor. Ice cream, so good. Ice cream, so good. Hello, Governor. I'm really tired. I really do have an issue with the caffeine deficit. I'm saving up disposable income for Armored Core 6, which I just realized feeds into the PMC discussion, so I'm going to be a while. Totally fair. Totally fair. Diego, believe me, there's zero reason for you to ever apologize. Or, as you put it, my support for a while has slowed to a trickle. Zero need to apologize. You could never ever do anything to support this channel again, and I would still be forever indebted to you, sir.
Rob to talk you through all this.
So please don't ever apologize. Dimitri, thank you very much for the gifted sub. Thank you, Dimitri. Very kind of you. Very supportive community, this. Is there anything else we want to chat about? Like I said, I'm going to be here for another 30 minutes. What are we chatting about? Do we need to chat about serious business still? There's all kinds of other interesting like videos and other clips that we could look at, but I just don't think I have the mental capacity to deal with it anymore. That Dracula song is really stuck in my head, and it's just wonderful. Twitter is introducing an ID system. I did see that, yeah, for the blue checks. Elon Musk is a guy that I'm just in a big hurry to send over my social security number, my banking info, my government-issued ID. I really want Elon Musk to get his grubby little hands on all those things. Absolutely. Kind of getting a little bit of a headache here, too. I'm really burning the candle at both ends lately. The first step to being a financial institution, X.com, the Everything app. I just wanted to have all my info. Your hat has an X on it? I guess it, in theory, but it's not like an actual, the letter X. It's more of just like a divider. But I guess that's true. This is, of course, my Toronto Raptors championship hat, featuring the Larry O'Brien Trophy, which the Raptors, of course, won in 2019. I'm still not even sure what he wants X to be, like another PayPal, because we've already got PayPal. I mean, yeah, he wants it to be PayPal with like a chat, I guess. And that you can scroll video on. I don't know. Why does it all have to be the same app? That's like you said, I already have PayPal. I can just use Twitter for microblogging, and then I can, when I want to use a financial app, I just take the 5 seconds that it takes to just switch to a different app.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual,
hello,
and I found
DJ
this.
Mule, thank you very much for the raid. Hello, raiders. Hello, DJ Mule. How was your raid today? Hey, folks, please, if you can, I'm Rob, by the way. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Please, if you can, smash the follow button. Do you know I'm only 3 followers away from hitting 8.9k followers. 3 measly followers away from 8.9k, and I know that might seem like an arbitrary number to you, and I get that, but it's not to me. It's not arbitrary to me. It's serious. And also, I have a secondary question for you, which is, what do you think of my shirt? What do we think of this shirt? DJ Mule, can you rate my fit? Rate my fit today, if you don't mind, sir. You actually just missed me just a few moments ago. I was doing my new character that I do sometimes when I'm trying to guilt guilt and shame people into subscribing to this program. Oh, 10 out of 10, King. Thank you, DJ Mule. That's the kind of answer that I was looking for. Thank you. And thank you, Husker, as well. My new character that I've been using when I try to... And if someone wanted to please gift a sub to DJ Mule as well, I think Mule should have all the emotes as well, all the tiny little pictures. If there's any brave hero that wants to gift a sub to DJ Mule, that'd be fantastic. But I did just unveil my brand new character that I sometimes employ when it's time to guilt and shame and cajole chatters into subscribing, which is malnourished British child. Malnourished Victorian child. And I say, hello, governor. Could you spare a sub, please? It's £5. And every time someone subscribes to this channel, I'm able to afford some medicine for me brother who has rickets. I was stuck in someone's chimney for an entire day today. I was trapped in there when I was only able to survive off the ash trimmings in the chimney. You like that? You like that? I can... As many people know, I can instantaneously mimic any culture around the world. I don't do the ones where it becomes troubling or problematic to do it, but I feel guilty for not donating now. I feel like I'm responsible for that kid dying. Exactly. No one would want that. No one would want that, would they? To feel any guilt about possible health consequences for brand new TRRS peripheral character, malnourished Victorian child. And yeah, any culture around the world, and the UK as well. Yeah, and Canada also. But yes, any culture around the world, and also the UK. You can convert your Amazon Prime account into a Twitch Prime sub completely free of charge. And you can contribute to me brother's Rickets Fund. I'm only 8 years old, but I've got to stay in the workhouse. I've got to stay in the workhouse every day making content. I use my little fingers to make the content. I object to the idea that Canada has a culture. Canada has no culture either, as I've mentioned many times before also. Hello, Osimo Grebe. I heard many good things about this zone. Have you heard good things about the Chaos Zone? Are you familiar with the Chaos Zone? As you'll see from this diagram here, this is how this community operates. Okay? And some of you, unfortunately, are these people right now. The non-subscribers. As you see, they're on the outside looking in of the friendship triangle system, which, if you're familiar with it, is indeed Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped trickle-down clout and friendship access tiered reward system. It's the only such system that exists anywhere on this entire platform. And by subscribing or gifting a sub, you get into that base level. And in order to rise to the elite level, that will take a gift of 5 or more subs. That puts you in the elite level of the friendship triangle system. But for the people that are in between the two, there's the Chaos Zone. The Chaos Zone. That's where some people are very comfortable operating in there. Some people are very comfortable operating in that chaos zone. But as you can see, no matter where you are in the system, you are a beneficiary of the trickle-down clout. Patented. The patented trickle-down clout system. Unlike trickle-down economics, trickle-down clout actually does work. That's right. Man, sorry, DJ Mule. I tried to get chat to gift a sub, but it's slow in here today. It's slow in here, which I understand. It was a big day for subs yesterday, so I completely get it. I tried to cajole people into gifting a sub for the stream, and I couldn't do it. I don't have the magic today. I think I need to be loaded up on energy drinks in order to really be able to do this. It's the only way it works. It's some like wavelength that gets picked up on by the chat here.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
BBTX. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you for gifting a sub to our friend DJ Mule. Exactly, Decadent. Chat's matching my energy today. I get it. I get it. Thank you very much, BB, for the gifted sub. And now our friend DJ Mule has all the little tiny images, some of the very best tiny images available on this entire platform. And also, please, chat, give DJ Mule a follow as well. I forgot to mention. Wait, DJ Mule. Now, I'm sorry. You know that I support you and I appreciate the raid and everything, but I gotta say, unfortunately, that this MF did just say Tijami Yapu. This MF just said Tijami Yapu. I don't know what that means, personally. I don't know what that's all about, but I don't know what's going on, what they're putting in the water over there in England. I can't remember exactly where you live, DJ Mule. Is it Birmingham? Is that where you live? Got too excited and posted L in the chat. You might not know, but I've traveled all over England because I used to be a mildly successful musician there. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about that. Manchester, okay. Wonderful place. Wonderful place. Where do you live, by the way? What's your address? And also, what's your relevant banking info? This is a really good thumbnail. Jesus.
For expressing interest.
Here's some more information about this community if you weren't sure about whether to subscribe or whether to join the community.
We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite Tier. It's not a cult.
Important to note that last part. Sometimes that trips people up. But as we know, there's nothing to worry about in that respect if that was ever something that you were concerned about. Nothing to worry about at all. Technologically reliable roasted sound. That's what it is. Like people were saying, asking about it the other day. I don't even think it's an acronym anymore. TRRS. That's just what it is. That's just what the show is. It's a good emote combination. Party 69. Well, what else do we got? What else is there to chat about? I've been chatting so much the last couple of days that my brain is a little bit fried. I got another 17 minutes here. I got 17 minutes. I kind of smell a funny smell, and I don't know where it's coming from. It's starting to bug me a little bit. Little inside baseball. I don't know if it's coming in from outside or what. What's going on here? Well, you know what? One thing I would like to do, though, while people are here still, please, folks, if you can, I waipu'd you in chat. God damn it. A few of you were around for this conversation last night with Eugene per year, where we talked about Niger and how that's kind of this latest flashpoint in this very rapidly shifting sort of global geopolitical landscape. But I threw that conversation up on YouTube. That's the link in the chat. If you can, if you're watching this right now, it is super duper helpful. I know I'm trying to get people to subscribe and do all this crazy stuff. But one thing that you can do that's very, very, very helpful, that costs nothing at all and takes literally 15 seconds, is just click the link and give it a little thumbs up, and maybe subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to. I am really trying to get into more of a habit of posting content from this show on there. But that was a really, really good conversation with Eugene. So if you can, leave that a like and a comment. That helps me out so much, and it's completely free of charge to do that. Really, really appreciate Eugene's insight and analysis on Niger and pretty much anything that you throw at him. He just has a wealth of knowledge that he can use to present his sort of analysis of it. He's really fantastic. Another thing you can do as well, thanks for the reminder, Nightbot, is join the Discord server. We got a movie night coming up in a little more than 2 hours, 2.5 hours. 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the Coen Brothers Burn After Reading. Absolutely amazing, extremely hilarious movie. And I think one of the best movies ever made about like the US-led intelligence community. That's going on in the Discord server tonight at 9:15. If you join the server, make sure you just like officially join, follow the directions when you get in there to ensure that you're getting the alerts and you know what's going on. And then you too can join us for the TRRS movie night tonight. The movie nights are always really, really fun and cool. I always really enjoy them. chat really is matching my energy today, isn't it? Wow. I really have to start. I should develop some kind of stimulant addiction, I think. I think that would help me career-wise. Fart party. I know, I'm trying to... I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I would certainly like to be above 9 if possible. Like I said, yesterday was fantastic. And we went way over the goal yesterday, which was awesome. It's been a slow chat day in the content mines. It has been. I also got started late, and I've been very low energy all day. But there's still a chance. There's still like 15 more minutes left for someone to subscribe or gift subs and help get me to a respectable level that won't psychologically damage me when I log off today. I think if I log off with 9 subs, I'm going to feel bad about myself. I'm going to feel bad about myself and my life and career choices. And just a few, I'm talking 2, maybe 3 generous sub-gifters could get me to a respectable level where I feel like I actually like accomplished something with my day today. I think as of now, it's kind of like I could have just not streamed and
you can count on me.
Just kind of enjoyed myself all day and just relaxed and stayed in bed and maybe went to the park. It's a beautiful day out today. It's been a beautiful day out today, and I've just been inside all day. So I think at this point, I could just say, yeah, I could have rather probably just done that. Double digits, Ponder Monkey. Thank you for the gifted sub. Very first gift sub in the channel, Ponder Monkey. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sean, you got to watch Burn After Reading, okay? No excuses. You don't think I'm tired? Yeah, I'm tired too. Suck it up. All right? You're watching the movie, and that's final. I don't want to hear it. Don't even... No, erase the comment that you're typing right now. Erase it. I don't want to hear it. Our guy wore this fit for you, and this is how you repay him, chat. Unbelievable. Well, for the record, it's Fart Party 69 saying this, and not me. It's Fart Party 69 chastising you like this. I'm being nice. I'm trying to be appreciative of the fact that there's people that are very, very supportive of this program. But you have, unfortunately, with this showing today, you've upset our friend Fart Party 69. And if you're comfortable with that, hey, go for it. You know what I mean? If you're okay with upsetting our friend Fart Party 69 and you're going to be able to live with yourself afterwards, sure. That's your decision, though. I personally would never want to do that, but just go for it, I guess. Yeah. That was I was honestly impressed with myself last night, my singing. It was so funny having a serious conversation about Niger and Pan-Africanism and decolonialism and imperialism and the Belt and Road Initiative and Russia-Ukraine and propaganda and all this stuff with Eugene Puryear, and then crooning Steely Dan's 1978 single Deacon Blues like 5 minutes later. That was such a jarring shift. But I guess that's why people tune into this show, right? It's a variety show. We do all kinds of stuff. We have fun. There's literally, sometimes I joke around about this, there's literally no other place where you can get that kind of content. There's a lot of Twitch streams,
You can
folks.
count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
There's a lot of Twitch streams out there. We're talking millions. Millions. There's no other Twitch stream that you can get that kind of specific blend of content. Hassan's not going to do that. Hassan's talented. He's a very talented streamer. He wasn't talented, he wouldn't be where he is right now. He can't do that, though. And he got crossed over by Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin broke Hassan's ankles when they were playing pickup basketball as well. Another thing he can't do is guard Dave Rubin when he's playing pickup ball. Ragdijin, thank you for the gifted sub. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. BT News is good, but do they do Steely Dan karaoke? No, they don't. And as I've told people, the next time I do get to 50 subs, when that day comes... I haven't seen Dave Rubin for a while. That's a good point, actually. I haven't seen him or thought about him in quite a long time. It seems like his whole grift dried up the more, like, he did this whole, like, I'm the sensible conservative and I'm gay and I show that the conservative movement isn't actually all that bad. And then, like, all these conservative guys that he's trying to be friends with are like, no, actually, I don't like you because you're gay. Oh, I'm adopting a child with my husband. And they're like, fuck you, I hate you, you're a groomer. Good job, Dave. You made a great decision. Great decision. No, I've never chatted with Richard Wolff, but that would be great. I like Richard Wolff.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Fart Party 69. Thank you for your gift sub to Dave Rubin's Left Nut. Your 100th gift sub in the channel. Thank you very much, Fart Party 69. I really appreciate it. You know, it's a mere one little 5 sub gift would get me to a point where I was basically halfway to my goal. And in the grand scheme of things, how much is that? You know, it's barely anything. You should have been a non. Fart Party 69, take your clout, okay? Take your clout. You deserve it. You deserve the clout. I worry that Professor Wolf still hangs around with Hedges. Yeah. Chris Hedges is another person that has a lot of great commentary, a lot of great analysis, but also has this big blind spot, this big blind spot called anti-communism. Many such cases. Many such cases. That was a very good use of 100th sub. I agree. Dave Rubin's Left Nut. I wonder how they're doing. That Twitch user. I'm sorry, but I have to watch it again.
I've never had to make a video quite like this before, and I really hope I don't have to again. I would simply splash his ass because Dracula can't get wet. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I said Dracula can't get wet. That was wrong and I regret it. But I'm making up for it. I'm the first one to admit now that Dracula can't get wet. Dracula can't get wet. Oh! Dracula, I'm sorry. I confused you with the witch from the Wizard of Oz. My father called me. He said, how the hell could you mess up this bad? I am appalled by my reflection. For the record, I know Dracula doesn't have a reflection, but it can get wet. It takes huge balls to admit Dracula can get wet. I'll never forget crackle a can get.
It's really just, and I'm not even complaining because it replaced the shitty country folk song. It's just been playing nonstop in my head. It just nonstop the entire day. Dracula, I'm sorry. Yeah, the overly dramatic O is great. Just everything about that is fantastic. I'm just in awe of the talent of this man, frankly. I'm extremely ready for spooky season. I'm so over the fire smoke. I haven't noticed any fire smoke over the last couple of weeks. I think it was probably in July. Early to mid-July that I last noticed any over here. It's not the kind of call you ever want to get from your dad. Look at his face. Acting. This guy's name is Nick Let's Go, former guest of the stream, actually. Well, folks, it's the moment of truth. Is there another brave hero that wants to subscribe to TRRS? Is there one brave hero? I need a hero. Hero. Is there one brave hero that wants to step up and support this channel? Yeah, he did the Dan Bongino song as he was sweating profusely. That's exactly right. Sweating profusely is kind of his main thing. He's on the song I don't like is Biden's Meat.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I love Joe Biden Wants to Take Your Meat. My kid loves that one too. Spell check. Thank you for 17 months of tier 1. Thank you for that spell check. I really appreciate everybody that supports this stream. I really, really do. And I never want to sound ungrateful or not respectful of the incredibly privileged position that I have to be able to do this show. Now, was the support at the level that I needed it to be today? No. No, it wasn't. But that's okay. Just like Michael Caine said, you can
count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Venus. Thank you for the gifted sub, Venus. I appreciate it. Why do we fall? Why do we fall? So we can learn to get back up again, I think was how that goes. Got offered a job today. Hell, big W for Venus. That's wonderful. Congratulations to you. Thank you, Sean. I know it was something like that. I don't dare do the face today. I can't do it. This guy, that bit, I don't dare do it. I know one day I'm going to try it and it's not going to work and I'm going to be stuck. It's going to be like a battle of wills, a war of attrition, where I have to decide how long I'm going to stay in holding that position. And I just don't want to put myself through that right now, you know? It's a great bit. The riskiest move of all. It's really it's a Hail Mary. It's a Hail Mary, and it's always borne some fruit. But I can't go through that today. I did not enough juice for the face bit today, no. No, I just don't have it. I don't have it in me. I don't have any Riz, don't have any sauce. no juice. I don't have any of those things. Sometimes a low-key stream is alright on a Wednesday. I'm still making it 4 hours. That's not so bad. That's not so bad at all. This shirt is bringing the energy. That's right. The loudness of the shirt was supposed to be compensating for my personal lack of pizzazz. Very little pizzazz today. But my question is, though, do I have the pizzazz to make it an even 15 subs? That's my question. Do I have the pizzazz to will a final sub into existence? Wacky Wednesday. It wasn't that wacky, that's right, in retrospect. I heard you saying this is not someone who lacks pizzazz. Well, it's just today. I learned a ton and a new song and the Ricketts Waif. It was amazing. SV Harkin, thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to manifest that final sub.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Ragdigen, that was very generous of you. Thank you for the gifted sub. I really appreciate it. Seriously, thank you for that. Yeah, I love that part, Sean. Hey, it stopped. I love that part. You know what? I should turn this into a song with like guitar and stuff. I could probably turn this into a pretty good song. It's served as a very functional goodbye song for a long time now, but I feel like I could probably add some cool shit to this if I set my mind to it. This is the song about tiny little images. Folks, thanks for tuning in. It was, as Sean pointed out, it was less wacky of a stream in retrospect than maybe I was imagining or anticipating. But I still had fun. I enjoyed hanging out with you. Thank you for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. I think, actually, I should be. A lot of it depends because my son is staying with my mom, his grandma, right now, or Gran, as he calls her. And I was originally supposed to get him tomorrow morning. I think that might be Friday morning now, so should be here tomorrow. If so, I'll be here for a good, decent one today. I'll try to tomorrow. I'll try to start at more of a normal time, and I'll make a final push to finish out the week strong. Thank you again, folks. Please give my regards to our friends in Subversive History. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you. Thank you for all your compliments on my shirt and my just overall handsomeness. There was a lot of people in here really reiterating over and over how attractive personally that they found me, and I gotta say thank you for that. I appreciate it a lot. I'll see you tomorrow. Tonight, actually, 9:15 Discord movie night. Goodbye.